So it says whether it's about ending northern domination or removing corruption in government or reforming the administration and structural imbalance in the federation, nobody had any issues with it. And this is where I'm going. This is why I actually brought up this book. Consequently, there was an atmosphere of general relief. By the way, we're speaking here, Anthony and Auro. Consequently, there was an atmosphere of general relief immediately after the coup of 15th January, until the pattern of killings which emerged when the dust has cleared revealed that this was a coup organized by young Igbo officers in the army. Whatever they may claim was their basic plan, its effect was that civilian leaders and senior military officers from other areas and ethnic groups were killed, while those from Igbo areas were spared. All non-Igbo senior military officers above the rank of major who were accessible, were killed in the January 15 coup. And I've said it several times. If Adebayo was around, he would have been killed. If Fajri was around, he would have been killed. If Babafemi Ogundipo was around, he would have been killed. The only reason those people were not killed was because they were not in the country. All right. All non-Igbo senior military officers above the rank of major, who were accessible were killed in the January 15 coup. There was only one exception to this, when a junior Igbo officer, half away through his midnight sleep, was killed in Apapa for refusing to hand over the key of the armory. Therefore, to most Nigerians, the incidents of 15 January were a clumsily camouflaged attempt to secure Igbo domination of the government of the country. This impression was later reinforced by certain appointments. Again, I'm reading Antonos Rauro's speech of 12th August 1968. So he says here, the opportunities of January 15 were misused in several ways by the Ironsi regime in the months that followed. For a while, every Nigerian hoped that the country would go on to achieve greater progress in its development generally. Unfortunately, General Ironsi allowed matters to be taken out of his hands by prominent Igbo leaders in the army, in the public service, and in public life. Affairs in the public service and the armed forces appeared to lend color to the impression that the coup of January 15 was designed to install Igbos in position of power. Listen, I'm going to read this from two sources, what I'm about to read right now. It says here, out of 21 promotions in the army in April 1966, for example, 18 were Igbo officers. Let me read some to you from this book by Adewale Ademoyega. It says here, if the truth must be spoken, Ironsi had implicit faith in his own type of Nigerians, the non-revolutionary and the reactionary type of Easterners and Midwest Igbos. Therefore, as soon as he had taken over the reins of power, he promoted more than 12 of them. It tallies with what Enauro is saying here. It says he promoted more than 12 of them from major to lieutenant colonel and gave them all the senior and sensitive positions in the army and air force. Apart from these, only 3 others were promoted from major to lieutenant colonel, and those 3 were northerners. Their promotions stemmed from the guilt of Ironsi and his ill-conceived notion of placating the northerners. But in so promoting the northern officers, he jumped over the heads of 5 Yoruba officers whom he did not care for, thus giving people the impression that the coup was designed and executed to achieve and promote Igbo domination of Nigeria. This is from Adewale Ademoyega, Why We Struck. Now back to Enauro. It says here, affairs in the public service and the armed forces appeared to lend color to the impression that the coup of January 15 was designed to install Igbos in positions of power. Out of 21 promotions in the army in April 1966, April is just three months after the coup. Out of 21 promotions in the army in April 1966, for example, 18 were Igbo officers. General Ironsi drew his principal officers from the Igbo ethnic group. Ethnic groups tend to be chauvinistic, but the Igbos were the most militantly chauvinistic, and this naturally created apprehensions in the minds of others. Now, there's a book, for instance, by Iluogbelam. Is that his name? Chuks Ilogbunam. where he was trying to explain this away. But again, I think it's something that people from the South should try to understand. Nigerians are not fools. Like, something has happened in the past. We know what happened. It makes no sense to gaslight people by telling them that we're not seeing it very well. Like, it's clear that happened. Why is this important? Because, see, let me tell you something. After the coup, a lot of people were happy. They didn't know why it happened, or they were just happy that we can heave a sigh of relief. Like, they were just happy that, quote unquote, the worst was over. You know, all this tension was over. So Nigeria would, until they now heard that the leaders who were killed were from certain parts, and certain other parts of Nigeria, the leaders were spared. That was when people began to question if it was a coup for Nigeria at all, or for just about Igbo. And you have to understand, if you're a human being, excuse me, if you're a human being and you are being fair, if you really ask yourself that question, how would you feel? And by the way, if you cried over JAMB results of last year, that was even not real, that was even the issue of the JAMB result, by the way, was error, or not that they wanted to do it, or maybe they wanted to, maybe they sabotaged it, I don't know, but they were Igbo, but they made that mistake, and yet people still blame the head of JAMB for doing something against the people. Now imagine that, and that of course it makes sense, because apart from Lagos, the 5 southeastern states were involved. Meanwhile, there were more people from Lagos than from the entire 5 southeastern states, but just details. Anyway, the point is whatever feeling you had, now imagine they kill your leaders, they don't kill any other person. You have worse feeling. That's how Nigerians felt. People felt betrayed. Like, everybody just noticed that you've unalived our own people, but you've not done anything to your own people. So people started asking questions. That was where the problem began. The coup was not even, the coup had something to do with the war, but the coup was not the reason people just say, oh, now we're going to go and start fighting people. They were actually happy. Back to this page, it says here, there was an atmosphere of general relief immediately after the coup of January 15th, until the pattern of killings which emerged when the dust had cleared revealed that this was a coup organized by young Igbo officers in the army. And then, like we read earlier, all the people who died, they had one thing in common: they were not Igbos. Those who lived had something in common: they were all Igbos. So people just put 2 and 2 together and they got 4. Now let's go. We're going to come back to this book because it's going to be one major source of information in this conversation. But if you have the book, keep a finger there. Let's go to the book by Nebo Graham Douglas.